Okay, so just want to do a quick brief overview or review rather of some of the basic tools for sketching, for line work, and then extruding. So let me hop over to Fusion. And I started with my little ducky symbol here. Now, this is really simple so far. I only basically have one extrusion already. Um, you can, of course, look at the history slider down here. We can step back in time on this. And this is what I mean by moving history slider back and forth before any sections. Ultimately, I extruded just the bill, and then on the next one, doing just the eyes, I sketched a ring there. You can definitely do these separately. I would recommend doing these separately in that this outer ring is a second sketch. You can see my duck sketch. Then when I hide that ring, they are separate. It's just disappearing because I can still kind of highlight it. Then as I step forward in time, I extruded just the base. Hiding stuff, not a big deal. Joining things, and then I extruded all the things, and it all automatically joined together. I'll show you how to make stepped extrusions and such. So let me hide what I've already extruded. That's a canvas. Hide all the bodies. Never gets old, at least not in my book. And I'll at least leave that as disk. Retitle that one as disk. Okay. All right. So that one is also this disk sketch. So I'll label those. Try to keep this a little bit straightened out for myself. What is that? That's also the disk. Did I make two of them? Must have. All right. So as is, I can go in, just delete this or leave it as it is. So straight to blank canvas. It's already been brought in using the canvas tool, inserted just an image from the computer, resized it, all that such. So I go to create sketch. I select the same profile plane that was working on, the XZ plane, the orange or the red and the white, or sorry, red and the green. Isolates over. So from here, just going to kind of do my best to trace around. Remember, you have straight lines, you have a variety of rectangles, you have circles, you have ellipses, and fit point splines. These are curved lines. Drop down, and you have a lot more options for each one of those. For the most part, I'm just going to be using what's already there. Fit point spline is for making curved lines. The more points you have, the tighter the turn you can make, but then you have the kind of the both benefit of you have a lot more control. The problem is you also have a lot more points to keep track of. So the more minimal you can keep it, usually the better. So I'm going to zoom in, point. If I make a couple close together, that works well. And I don't have to make this exact by any means. This project is not at all an exacting project. This is simply practicing. I'm just tracing around. And if I get a little bit out of shape on that, that's fine. I can try to adjust that by moving the points around later or anything else. Wow, that actually worked really well. Now, sharp points, sharp curves, finish that line, that fit point spline, hit enter. I can drag these lines around and such. Remember, I can also adjust the handlebars if I need to, or not. Control Z that. But if I need a sharp point, finish the line, start a new fit point spline. Not a new sketch. Finish or just a new fit point spline. That's all. Starting from the same point, drawing outward. Tracing around in a very bad fashion here. Kind of sort of close enough. This definitely going to adjust the handlebars, squish that in a little bit. That point, click and drag, maybe move it up. Oh, that actually worked pretty well. There you go. And again, close enough is close enough. For the bill, you're going to do another one. Fit point spline. I don't know. I'll start like on a straight spot. There you go. Zoom in. Close enough. If you want to actually have that point connect, that's fine. Up and around. Keep going. Keep going. If that's too tight a turn, don't continue. Just hit enter and finish it. I can adjust this line here. Adjust my handlebar. Just click and drag. There we go. Pretty close. I can also right click and bring up my reset tools. And the top one is going to be the one that I just used. Click there. tracing around, trying to get close, get some closer together, and you can close it up. There you go. Remember, if you have a complete enclosed line, when you mouse over, it will highlight. It will change from blue to black, and you'll see a light blue image inside. You can't really see it right now because of the canvas. If I hide that, you can see how now the outlines are blue within those lines. That means it's a closed sketch. What I mean by that, if it were not a closed sketch, if it were open, I'm not gonna be able to do it. If this line weren't complete, and it's already, let's change this. I will delete the coincident and move that point. Now that whole, my duck is no longer complete. It's a sad duck. It does not complete, so it's not an enclosed line, meaning it's a completely encircling and in making a closed design. Bring that line back somewhere. If you mouse it over to the line, see my cursor go from just the point to that X, that means it's making contact. If I drag it past, that's also okay. Not a big deal. It still encloses because it's all the same sketch. It's all the same profile plane. So meaning everything is on, basically treating this as it's all on the same sheet of paper right now. If I redraw it, even if I go past the line, if I color outside the lines, it's okay as long as I complete that outline. Bring my canvas back up, my image. We're good. Simple way to make like the eyes. I used some ellipses. Ellipses form on the center. So as I select center, I draw outward for the outermost and then up and down right there. Cool, that works. Now there's a whole bunch of other tools we will play with. One of the ones is like an offset. What that is it just makes a concentric line or circle, whatever, either outside or inside. But the cool thing is, if I select this tool, meaning rather than draw another ellipse because I don't want to trace it all out because I'm lazy in the computer and I can let the computer do the work. Select that and it makes an outline either on the inside or outside, but it keeps the profile as best as it can based on the dimensions. And what I mean by that is right now that's way bigger. Let's cancel all that and let's repeat an offset on, say, like the duck body. The further away I go, the smoother, more smoothed out it gets. Because what that's working on is brand new marker already did. What it's working on is taking straight perpendicular dimensions out. So in here, those lines converge. So the further out, you're going to get more distortion. Closer in, it's much closer. Flip it, and obviously the lines are going to get much more distorted the other way. So it's just a neat tool. Also, again, let the computer do the work. So for the eyeball, yeah, I'm going to do an offset for that. Go in a little bit. Let's say -1. Sure. And if I want to make that little notch in it, I can use just a line tool somewhere. As long as they intersect, there we go. I can now use a trim tool because sometimes you can't just select that little segment and delete it. It's not going to let you. But if I have the trim tool active, now it automatically treats any overlapping, intersecting lines as something that it can trim against. So chop that chunk out, that one. You'll get a warning. The constraints have been changed. Yeah, it's fine. I know I did that. There you go. Trim is complete. So you can, of course, add like extra details. Let's say, like, just for sake of the extrusion, let me add like the inside of this bill. Something kind of sort of close enough will work. Close enough. Weird that that's, there we go. Okay. Kind of, sort of, we're going to go with a one-eyed duck just because I don't want to draw the other one right now. Okay. So now I finished and I hit finish sketch. So now I'm outside of the sketch environment. All my sketch tools have swapped back to the standard tools. You can extrude this based off of what it is. So let's just save here. Make sure to save. New ducky sketch or new sketchy duck. We're going to use the extrude tools from here. Now, this is what takes those flat two-dimensional lines and goes straight up or down and makes this into a three-dimensional object. Select from there, and I could say, let's just start with the bill. I'll go up like 1 millimeter. Let's make it a couple more. Let's say 3, so it's a little bit easier to see. Now, I did not select the inside there. I can, and then it'll all snap to the same height. But if I don't, it'll leave a little hole there. That's okay. So that's one extrusion. Now my sketch has just disappeared. That happens because Fusion assumes, oh, you did something with that sketch, you're done. Not though. So unhide the sketch. I forgot which one I was working on, so let's make sure to label that. Duck sketch 2, the return. So to make different heights so that I can delineate different things, do multiple extrusions. So you can go up here, click the extrude, or the hotkey like it says at the top. Let's just press the E key. There we go. And let's go up, I don't know, 2. Now, on the toolbar that pops up here, the toolbox, you have a bunch of different options. Most of the time, we're just going to leave these as default for this project. But the very bottom, it automatically assumes you want to join these together. You don't have to, because if I select new body, it's just going to make more and more bodies. So, duck bill, misspelled that. I swear I'm developing multiple different types of dyslexia. Let me hide that canvas and you can see a little more clearly. Different heights, and you can see what you're working on a little bit easier. Also, speaking of seeing stuff, if you need to change colors to see things a little bit more easily, you can press Control in November. Oops, that was new. Sorry. Shift November, and it just switches to automatic coloring. Nothing has changed. I have not applied a new color to it. This is just so you can see objects more clearly. That's all. Okay. So, I mean, technically, if I wanted to leave the eyeball open or the mouth open, I could leave that as my keychain, and then it'd just be a horror show because my duck, I'm jamming my keys to its eyeball. So let's not do that. All right. So say I like where those heights are, that sort of thing, but I don't really want to add any thickness to it right now. So let me unhide the disc that's the overall, and I can extrude that disc because I made that on a separate sketch entirely, separate from my duck. It just makes it easier to keep things separated. If it's all the same design, keep everything on the same sketch. If you want to add an additional ring or something, make a new sketch. That's really how you would go about it. If I decide, excuse me, I want to make changes to that sketch, do not start a new sketch. Either mouse over on your project tree or find it on the history slider. You can just select an object or a sketch and it'll show up down here, or highlight rather. Right click, edit sketch, brings me right back and I can make whatever adjustments I might need. Recalculate. After I'll hit finish sketch. It'll recalculate all that new, bring it back to current. There you go. I'm going to take that disc, though, now, and I want to add an extrusion to it. But because I don't want it to overlap with what I've already done, I'm instead going to extrude downward. So all that is placing a negative number on that. You can either drag it down, which is going to take you way too far probably, or just in this case, I'm going to put -2 millimeters. That's plenty. There you go. Now, oops, I forgot to highlight that. On the edit feature, the operation automatically goes to join. My decuck bill and decuck body, since I can't spell apparently, are two separate bodies. If I leave this as new body, it will add an additional body. However, if on the edit feature, I leave it as what it wanted to do, automatically join, now it's going to join all those into a single body that I could then actually go directly to printing. From here, This is where you could add like holes and such. You can use the hole tool. I don't like it because it's a little bit more difficult to place things directly where you want it. What I prefer to do is create a sketch and extrude from that. You can either go back in to your original sketch and edit and then like add a hole. This obviously won't work on this one because I don't have my ring. So I need to go to the disk sketch and then I could edit that one. But because I created this before I made the duck, it hides it. So it just gets confusing. So if you're running into that and it's just confusing you, that's okay. You can create a new sketch, but I want to show you what I'm doing is you can mouse over a surface and you will now draw directly on that surface. Creates a new one, bam, everything's showing. There you go. If I want to just create a hole here, there we are. Boop. It's a little bit closer than I want it to the edge. That's okay. I can click and drag that around. Finish sketch. Now extrude just that circle. And I can drag it straight through and it automatically switches to cut. If you want to keep this more controlled, one of the things you could do is you have your options here. The start plane is where it's drawn. It's going to start the extrusion there. Direction, yep, one-sided, only goes one direction. The extent type is default by distance, meaning you can either add in a number or manually drag it. But if you select to object, whatever you select, it will always snap to that. So if I select the bottom, it's going to cut straight through. Well, how is that different? You would do that in case you decide, oh, you know what? Actually, this bottom disc, I actually would like that thicker. Go back, right click, edit feature. I'm going to change that to -4. That's way too big, but whatever. When it recalculates, it's still going to have that hole all the way through. The reason you would do that is if, say, you only drug it through just enough to go through, if you go back to recalculate, or you have to go back, change some dimensions, then you would have to go back and change that one manually too. But if it's set to just snap to whatever the bottom is, and it's always going to cut through, no matter how thick you make that base, it's always going to cut through. That's all. And you can always, of course, add some additional features here. Using the fillet tool, I kept telling people if it's a key ring, keyhole, make that key ring, that keyhole circular a little bit. So I'm going to use a fillet tool. What that is it just makes a curve on a straight line or on an edge. I'm going to select, you can either select the edges or just the whole inside of that cylinder. Try something, I don't know, 1 millimeter. Hey, that worked. So that just curves the edge a little bit. That's all. I could do a fillet around the sides too. You can select it individually, or depending on how close the edge to the edge here is, try out the full round fillet. Full round just means if it can, it's going to make a complete smooth circle. Select the outside edge. And now, a little bit hard to see with the virtual plane there. The whole outside edge is round. That's all. You don't have to do that, but makes for a nice feature. And there you go. So that is real close to the edge. That might have been a problem. There you go. Main thing with this is you need to make sure that everything is joined to one body. And if you haven't, use the combine tool. And what this is, it's a multifunction tool. You can either combine, join, you can use objects to cut, or you can have two overlapping objects and you remove everything else that isn't overlapping. But for right now, we're just using the combine tool. Link them all together, one solid flat object, and that you can print. But that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward thing. The details you add are up to you. I can always go back in and do like add a sketch now directly on top of the duck. And let's say text. We'll add a little text box. And I don't know, just because whatever. Whatever font tickles your fancy. Ooh. I don't know. Whatever. Hit OK. And if it's too big, drag it around until it fits. There you go. Just note that if a couple of y'all that played with this have already found this out, I'll finish that sketch. We'll say ducky sketch. Oops, I accidentally hit the key on there. There we go. If you extrude this individually, you can select it all as a single sketch, but if you extrude this individually, not as joined, but as a new body, it's going to create each one of these letters as its own body here. All you have to do is just, if you join them, you have to select all the things. Or edit feature, let it do what it wanted to do, join, link it together, no problem. I will warn you, some fonts are going to make things that are slightly too small, like this edge here. When we go to print these, that might actually be smaller than the print head itself is, and it won't translate. If you run into that, what you might end up having to do, go back to the sketch and like double click on that and like maybe bold type. Usually that'll fix it. At worst, you'll need to change a font. And I want to edit this feature to, instead of going forward, I want it to go -1, so it cuts inward. What just happened? Oh, because it joined instead of cutting. There we go. So now it's just internal. No difference. Just different ways you can do the same things, and it's kind of nightmarish because it's just a haunting eyeball. So whatever. But there you go. It's a pretty straightforward thing in that the main thing is just learning the different tools and such. And we'll do cut, extrude. Forgetting how to spell. There we go. All right. So that's just a quick rundown, just as a reminder. We'll play with them.